Measurement and scales.
By the end of this topic, you should be able to
define conceptualization and operationalization,
explain the 4 types of scales used in research,
prescribe the measures of quality used, and
assess the sources of measurement errors.
This topic begins with an explanation of conceptualization and operationalization.
The definition of concepts and the methods of measuring the concepts will help the researcher to determine the methods of collecting and analyzing data.
The process of defining concepts is important in a research to ensure that readers have the same understanding as the researcher. This will prevent any confusion or misunderstanding by readers in interpreting the meaning of the concept.
Once the concept is defined, it is necessary to identify the methods to measure the concept.
Measurement of the variables is an integral part of the research process and is an important aspect of a research design.
Unless the variables are measured in some way, the researcher will not be able to test the hypothesis and find answers to complex research issues.
Conceptualization.
In a research, we use concepts that vary in levels of abstraction, from simple concepts such as shoes, table and height, to the most abstract such as satisfaction, marketability, love and stress.
It is necessary to clarify the meaning of the concepts used in order to draw meaningful conclusions about them.
In daily life, we communicate through a system of vague agreements on the use of terms. In many cases, other people do not exactly understand what we wish to communicate and the meaning of the terms we use.
This will cause conflict, but we somehow get the work through. In the scientific research, however, this scenario is not acceptable. Scientific research cannot operate in an imprecise context.
Conceptualization is the mental process of making imprecise notions, mental images, conceptions, into more specific meanings to enable communication and eventual agreement on the specific meanings of the terms.
We specify what we mean when we use a particular term. The process of conceptualization will produce specification of the indicators of what we have in mind on the concept we are studying.
For example, the concept of compassion may comprise different kinds of compassion. There is compassion towards humans or animals. In addition, compassion may be an act or a feeling. It could also be seen in terms of forgiveness or pity.
The grouping of the concept is known as dimension. Thus, conceptualization involves both specifying dimensions and identifying the various indicators for each.
The process of refining abstract concepts is called definition. By defining a concept, we derive its meaning to draw conclusions.
The concepts are specified using
operational definition,
nominal definition,
nominal definition,
a working definition for the purpose of an inquiry in assigning a meaning to a term. It helps to focus on how to strategize an observation but not to make the actual observation.
Operational definition.
How the concept is measured, by specifying what to observe, how to observe and how to interpret the observation. Operational definition is undertaken to measure a concept.
Conceptualization may differ among researchers, but definitions are specific and unambiguous.
Therefore, even if one disagrees with the definitions, he has a good idea of how to interpret the results, because the definitions are clear and specific.
Activity.
How do you define the concept of socioeconomic status in terms of nominal definition and operational definition?
Operationalization.
Once the concepts have been identified, the next step is the process of developing the specific research procedures or operations that will result in empirical observations representing those concepts in the real world.
The process of linking a conceptual definition to a specific set of measurement techniques or procedures is called operationalization.
These are procedures to measure a concept either through a collection of data from a survey research or by conducting observation research. The following example explains this.
Operationalizing the concept of an individual or person.
Variable, individual attributes, gender characteristics, male or female.
Nominal definition.
An individual is either a male or female. Operational definition, if B defines or represents an individual.
Mapping out attributes.
1. Represents an individual who is a male.
0. Represents an individual who is a female.
Thus, for B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, B6.
B1 is measured as 1 if B1 is a male, B2 equals 0 if B2 is a female.
B3 is measured as 1 if B3 is a male, B4 equals 0 if B4 is a female.
B5 equals 1, B6 equals 0. To be meaningful, the measurement must follow rules that specify procedures of assigning numbers to objects of reality.
Variables.
At the theoretical level, concepts and constructs are used, whereas at the empirical level, the constructs are transformed into variables.
Thus, variables are the construct or property to be studied. A variable consists of logical groupings or sets of attribute SO values.
An attribute is the intensity or strength of attachment to attitudes, beliefs and behaviors associated with the concept.
It is a characteristic or quality of a concept or symbol to which numerals or values are assigned.
Two important characteristics of a variable are:
attributes composing the variable must be exhaustive.
Attributes composing a variable must be mutually exclusive.
There are 5 types of variable.
Dependent DV, criterion variable,
is the variable of primary interest to the researcher. The goal is to understand and describe the dependent variable.
Independent fourth. Predictor variable.
influences the dependent variable either in a positive or a negative way. The variance in the dependent variable is accounted for by the independent variable.
Moderating MV
is a second independent variable and has a strong contingent contributory effect on the original stated IV-DV relationship.
Extraneous EV
is a random variable that has little impact on the relationship.
Intervening IVV
shows the link between IV and DV. It acts as a DV with respect to an IV and as an IV with respect to a drive.
Activity. What are the relationships between IV, DV and IVV?
How does the inclusion of MV change or affect the relationship?
Measurement.
The concepts used in a research are divided into objects or properties. Objects are things such as shirts, hands, computers, shoes, books and papers.
Things that are not so concrete such as genes, nitrogen, attitudes, stocks and peer group pressure are also included as objects.
Properties or attributes, on the other hand, are the characteristics of the objects. An individual's physical characteristics are indicated in terms of weight, height and posture.
An individual's psychological attributes are shown in terms of attitudes and intelligence.
The social characteristics of the person included leadership ability, social status or class affiliation. The object and the characteristics can be measured in a research study. Measuring the properties indicators of the objects makes the measurement of the objects or characteristics more sensible.
It is easy to see that A is older than B, and C participates more than D in a group discussion. Indicators such as age, working experience and number of reports done can be easily measured.
Hence, they are so commonly accepted that one considers the properties to be observed directly.
However, properties such as an individual's ability to solve problems, motivation for success, political affiliation and sympathetic feelings are more difficult to measure.
Since they cannot be measured directly, they have to be gauged by making inferences to the presence or absence of certain behavior or attitude by observing some indicators or pointer measurement.
Essentially, the measuring process consists of giving numbers or symbols to empirical events based on a set of rules.
The process of making the measurement involves 3 steps.
Selecting observable objects or properties.
Using numbers or symbols to represent aspects of the events or objects. And
applying a mapping rule to connect the observation to the symbol.
Thus, some mapping rules are devised to transfer the observation of the property indicators using these rules.
The accepted rules in using numbers to map the observation of the indicators include
order of numbers,
difference between numbers,
the number series,
order of numbers.
One number is greater than, less than or equal to another number.
Difference between numbers.
The difference between any pair of numbers is greater than, less than or equal to the difference between any other pair of numbers. And
the number series
has a unique origin indicated by the number 0.
Self-check.
Why is it necessary to define the concepts of research clearly?